Hi, welcome back to MOAB, Making Music on a Budget. This time we're going to look at 5 tips that will help you create your music and really realize your vision. If you are somebody who, is very good at their instrument, you can be woken up in the middle of the night and you will spring out of bed, into action and play the most amazing music ever. It's probably not for you. Or if you're somebody, who has a musical vision and can just execute on that vision until it's done, I think you're in the wrong place. But if you're like me, you love making music, but sometimes you get stuck or you get distracted, and sometimes it takes you 1 year or 2 years or 7 years or 8 years or 15 years to finish a song, then these tips might help you. Okay, here's tip number 1. Art is not a distant land. What do I mean by that? If we are members of the OF club, especially if we have been members for some time, life can seem like one big stream of, adult responsibilities. Art can seem very far away. It's very, very hard to tune into your creative frequency. At least for me, making music is one way to crack through that ice sheet of mundane adult daily life. Many people I talk to, there's always this dream, and I include myself, I'm going to go into the mountains, into a hut, and I'm going to record, or I'm going to move into a house by the sea, or I'm going to rent out Abbey Road or whatever. All these preconditions that are necessary to create the music you always wanted to create. So at least in my case, I really started to realize that this longing for, this one day when I can only fully concentrate on music is just an excuse to either not start or not finish something. Or maybe it's just a longing for the salad days of my youth, right? When we had all the time in the world. Art is not a distant land. The creative battery for your, musical or artistic expression is your own life. It's your actual life, right? So your anger and your joy and your ecstasy or your tedium is really what should be the fuel for your music or for whatever you want to create, right? So start right now. Here is tip number 2. Let it mature, don't let it rot. When we create music, or at least when I create music, it's almost like falling in love, right? I think about a melody or a chord progression all the time. When I go to sleep, I wake up, I say, there's this song, and then I whistle the theme while I brush my teeth. Of course, when we work on something over a certain period of time, the sheen can come off, which means that, it might seem as though actually it's all very, very bad. It's just a bad song, and I'm the only one who has deluded themselves to believe it isn't, and everybody else knows it. I think the only remedy here is to record a first take. But the quality of the first take or the first version is not a testament to your musical inadequacies or your ultimate failure as an artist, right? It's just a first take. Usually first takes or first versions of a song are not great or potentially terrible. What really helped me is to understand that there are no bad ideas. There are just ideas that are fully baked, they are matured, and there are ideas that are not there yet. There is no bad idea. But the only way to roll the cheese up the hill, or I don't know what the metaphor is here, is to keep banging out these takes or these tries where you say 100 times, well, that wasn't it, right? No, this didn't work either. Okay, this one is getting closer, and then you just, cheat your way to something you like. So let it mature, don't let it rot. If you let it rot, you will never do it, and it's a shame because potentially it might be a great song. Here's tip number 3. Do it quick, but do it right. There is a certain, mental trap I'm prone to fall into, which is if I'm recording a track for a song, especially if it's a lead track, like drums or keys or vocals, I always think, this needs to be the ultimate riff or the iconic beat or the vocal line that everybody remembers, just like the heroes of old did when they recorded their stuff. I think this is a self-defeating way of looking at things. Because, at least in my case, I don't have any switch I can turn on to go into legendary mode. Because it's not a video game, this is real life. So here's the next tip. Tip number 4. What really helped me to overcome this hump or this rut where I couldn't finish, recording something because I wanted too much, is to try to listen to the song from the future. That simply means I'm trying to imagine any track I'm playing within the context of the song, not so much as an individual track that has to be beyond reproach or has to be the best ever, but it just serves a certain function within the framework of the song, keeping the beat or creating a certain vibe or atmosphere. And then I just try to play that, right? But sometimes a bland or maybe mediocre or not or unexciting take might be just, the puzzle piece your song needs to, bring it all together. Here's the last MOAB tip for you. 90 often seems closer to 0 than to 100. What does that mean? That means if you have, you have written your song, you have followed your mental storyboard, you laid down the tracks, you invited some other musicians to play on it, and you have this smorgasbord of musical ingredients that you're now using to, finalize the song, to put it all together. Right at the 90% mark of completing the song, all of a sudden it will start to sound terrible. I don't know why. But I often have this feeling of, I fell out of love with this piece. I never want to listen to it again. Let me go on a tangent. Tangent light is switched on, right? I went to an art exhibition a few weeks ago by a female still life painter from the 1800s called Rachel Ruiz. And she was the most, famous painter, at least female painter of her time. And there were two pictures next to each other, two still lives of some flowers on a table. And the interesting thing is that Rachel and her sister got the same education. So one picture was very flat in 2D, and it was well made, very, very technical. And you could see that, a lot of effort went into it. And the other picture, I don't know, it just popped, you say, oh yeah, I see these flowers and it's all 3D and three-dimensional. It's almost exciting, as far as a still life can be exciting. And there was Rachel's picture and the other one was her sister's picture. Sometimes little details or a certain je ne sais quoi make a big, big difference. Let me try to illustrate what I'm trying to convey with so many words by playing you a version of maybe 3 weeks ago of my most recent song. Here we go. I don't know if it's obvious, but at least to my ear, it's somehow, it just doesn't come together. It doesn't move me. And of course, I was very, very frustrated and very sad because I liked this song and I thought, I fell in love with this song. What's happening? Then we kept pushing, and especially, of course, the friend I'm mixing with, worked some wonders, and we really went back to the drawing board, so to speak, cutting out things. And I'm going to have a video series on this specific song, and we're going to look at the parts and the guitars and all the things and the choirs and all that, how it all came together. And then we came up with this version, which is now the final version. Let me play you a bit. I don't know if you can feel it, but for me it's like night and day. This one works, the other one didn't. So 90 sometimes seems to be closer to 0 than to 100, right? But you just need to keep searching, because if you fell in love, a long time ago, maybe years ago, there is something there. Trust yourself. You didn't just write it for nothing. For me, the ultimate test is whether I can remember a time before the song existed, right? Can I remember the time before this song came into being? And if I say, no, it's always been there, basically, then for me, that's a good sign. Long story short, if you follow these tips, not waiting too long, trying to get a clear vision, a clear handle on what you want to achieve, just having a first take and a second take and a third take, not fretting about the individual parts of the song too much, you know, because you want to stretch. I mean, everybody has a skill budget, as I keep saying. So you can only play within your skill budget. Over time, you will get better and your first takes will get better. But all the people we hear, you know, these great musicians that have these amazing first takes, all these things they keep creating out of thin air, well, of course they're super talented, but it's also because they have a long history of many takes, right? Of many first takes. So I think it's a cycle, right? Falling in love, falling out of love, you know, settling for what you have and say, oh yes, it's not that bad in the grand scheme of things, and then moving on to the next song. So thank you so much for sticking with me, listening to my ramblings. Let me know whether you found these tips helpful. Maybe you have some additional tips, you know, what works for you, what helps you to, you know, to really bring it home. And I'm going to see you next time when we are going to make some music on a budget. Bye bye.